All right, good evening and welcome to the Congressional Candidates Forum hosted by Philly Neighborhood Small Business Council, Committee of 70, and my office, Councilman David Oh. I'd like to thank and recognize our 23 participating organizations: Small Business Union, Arab American Development Corporation, Korean American Association of Greater Philadelphia, Philadelphia Dominican Grocers Association, MEXCON, Philadelphia Haitian American Chamber of Commerce, Greater Philadelphia Chinese Restaurant Association, Asian American Licensed Beverage Association, Philadelphia Independent Towing Association, AFRICOM, consisting of 11 African organizations, Vietnamese American Community of the USA, Mount Airy Business Association, Business Association of West Parkside, LA 21 or LA 21st Century Business Association, Professionals for Progress, Citizens Networking for Progress, Philadelphia Beverage Association, West Philadelphia Corridor Collaborative, National Homicide Justice Alliance, New Kensington Community Development Corporation, United Bank of Philadelphia, Greater Northeast Philadelphia Chamber of Commerce, and Home Quarters and Friends. And in particular, let me just thank the Philadelphia Beverage Association for providing part of the funding or the funding for tonight's hotel. And also to CMAC, Southeast Asian Mutual Assistance Associations Coalition, for their support in tonight's event. This event is an effort to provide to organizations an opportunity to learn about the candidates running for Congress in the 3 congressional districts. And it is a little confusing right now, but we're very glad to see everyone come out to participate. Additionally, PhillyCam is videotaping this forum for cablecast on PhillyCam channels. This forum will also be available online. And now it's my pleasure to introduce David Thornburg, who will provide opening remarks. David Thornburg is President and CEO of Committee of 70, an independent good government nonprofit right here in Philadelphia. Prior to assuming leadership of Committee of 70, David served as Executive Director of University of Pennsylvania's Fels Institute of Government. And before that, he was President and CEO of the Alliance for Regional Stewardship, a best practice network of regional leaders in communities across the United States. And before that, he served as Executive Director of the Economy League of Greater Philadelphia, one of the nation's oldest and most respected private sector-led regional think and do tanks. Please give a warm round of applause for David Thornburg.
Well, thank you, David, for your nice introduction, and it's a great pleasure to be here. And particular thanks to Councilman and his office and for the many sponsoring organizations of this event. I think it's a healthy sign that we've got a fully engaged democracy when it takes the councilman just as long to name all the sponsors as it is to say welcome and hello. So credit to all of you for doing the great work that you do in your neighborhoods to sponsor this kind of event. I just want to say a few words. Committee of 70 has been around for an awfully long time, 114 years, and it's based on the basic proposition that I think we've embraced along the way, and we're a group of private sector leaders that care about democracy and the quality of government and politics here in Philadelphia and Pennsylvania. But the basic premise is this whole thing called democracy works only if people get engaged and people get educated and people come out to vote. Otherwise, it doesn't. And without getting overtly political, these are interesting times for democracy right now. I'll just leave it at that. But it's even more important that all of the above take place, that more people turn out, more people run for office, more people pay attention to the issues and the candidates and talk with their neighbors about this stuff. We gotta make politics a safe topic of discussion again. So that's my opening pitch to you. Again, thanks to you for giving up. I don't know if any of you are Sixer fans. Maybe you can get home by the time the game starts. You know, you're all here. You've got families at home. You've got endless businesses to take care of. You got your own R&R to look after, and a credit to you for coming out on a Monday night to talk politics. With that, it's my great pleasure to introduce Jennifer Lynn, an award-winning broadcast journalist and host of HYY's Morning Edition, who's going to moderate the panel. Jennifer is probably a familiar voice to many of you. She welcomes us all to the morning, and I know I'm a loyal listener, and look forward to her voice and her insight every morning. But it's my pleasure to welcome her and introduce her as the moderator this evening. And Jennifer, the floor is yours. So thank you all for a chance to be with you.
It's a pleasure to be with you. I'm a little tall. I'm going to get rid of the heels. Welcome to the Congressional Candidates Forum. It really is a pleasure to be here. I'm so impressed with the turnout. I'm going to explain some of the procedures for the forum, and each of the candidates has received the procedures ahead of time, correct? Okay. So the program is divided into 3 segments. Each segment is timed based on the number of candidates we have. Each candidate will have an equal opportunity to speak to the questions. Candidates, you have 1 minute for an opening statement, and 1 minute for a closing statement, and 2 minutes to answer a question that's given to you, each of the questions that are given to you. And the timekeeper, hello in the back. Candidates might want to strain your neck behind. They're sitting in the back, and when there's a half a minute left on your speaking time, the timekeeper is going to hold up a card that says 30 seconds. There it is now, indicating you have 30 seconds to finish your answer. 15-second card will be raised when you have 15 seconds remaining, and when you see the stop card, it's time to stop. So if you continue speaking after that, I'll just very politely say thank you, and we'll move on. Please note that there are cameras in the back. As David Thornburg pointed out, this forum is being recorded by Philly Cam. So everyone else, let's be good citizens and good patrons of this event. Please turn off your cell phones. I heard some noises earlier. Any beeping watches, anything that you have that's going to make noise as we are recording, and we don't want to interrupt the candidates. And remain quiet throughout the forum. I know you may have some fan favorites here, but no clapping, no cheering, no calling out. There is an exception. After all of the closing arguments, you can clap for all the candidates that you wish. Candidates available following the forum to talk to people, so if you have follow-up questions, if there's a moment to get someone's attention who will be speaking on the panel tonight for the forum, there may be an opportunity for you to follow up and get a question in or say hello. We're going to start the first segment with the candidates for the 3rd Congressional District. Will the following folks come on stage and take a seat by your name? We have Kevin Johnson, Brian Leib, and Senator Art Haywood will be acting as a surrogate for Congressman Dwight Evans, and the congressman wishes he could attend tonight. He cannot. He's in Washington for a vote, so we'll be respectful of that. Is everyone seated where they can be? Okay, using the microphones, terrific. So candidates, you have a minute for the opening statement, and we are going to start when you're ready with Mr. Kevin Johnson.
Good evening. I am Kevin Johnson. I'm running for the new 3rd Congressional District. I come from a working class family. My grandfather, Sandy Johnson, had his own business, a janitorial business, and he gave me my first job in cleaning and waxing floors. I share that with you because I come from a family of entrepreneurs. I'm not a 30-year career politician. I'm a job creator. I'm someone who knows how to create things from scratch. When I went to Philadelphia OIC, I was able to help nearly 3,000 people get jobs, get the training that they need so they can provide for themselves and for their families. And the reason I'm running is because I want to help to bring back jobs here to Philadelphia, but also because I'm concerned about poverty and addressing that poverty issue. I've done it at OIC, and I know I can do it here across this great region in the new 3rd Congressional District. Kevin Johnson for the new 3rd Congressional District.
We'll next hear from Mr. Brian Leib.
Good evening. My name is Brian Leib. I'm 32 years old, and I'm currently the treasurer of the Philadelphia Young Republicans. I'm running for Congress to represent Pennsylvania's 3rd Congressional District. I'm a 4th-generation Philadelphian who loves our city. And while we have much to be proud of, I also recognize that we aren't living up to our full potential as a city. Philadelphia is ground zero for the national opioid epidemic right now. Political corruption runs rampant throughout all levels through our political process here. So I firmly believe that we need to have better schools to ensure our children's future, because every child deserves a chance to receive a first-class education, and every parent should have the choice to make that decision as well. So the time has come to send problem solvers to Washington, D.C., who aren't afraid of rolling up their sleeves and doing the work that we need to do. Please join me as we work together for a better Philadelphia, for all of Philadelphia. Thank you.
And we also have in for Dwight Evans this evening, Senator Haywood.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the invitation. So I just want to share a few things about how I know Congressman Evans. Congressman Evans has been in politics and making government work for over 30 years. And it takes a special skill to make government work for people. I'm going to give you 2 examples of how he has done so. Number 1, he is the author and originator of the fresh food financing effort. The fresh food financing effort put 85 stores in neighborhoods that didn't have fresh food across the entire Commonwealth and created over 5,000 jobs. Making government work is expanding the convention center in a way to create an entirely new tourism industry in Philadelphia and bring thousands and thousands of jobs to this area. That's making government work. That is Dwight Evans.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. We're going to move on to the question and answer portion of our segment. All 3 of you have 2 minutes to answer each question, and we're going to start with this one and address this to first Kevin Johnson. As a prospective representative of Philadelphia in Congress, what experience and capabilities do you have that would lend you to be a strong representative of small businesses in Philadelphia? What changes would you like to pursue in Congress on behalf of small businesses?
Thank you. I believe that on this stage, I'm actually the only one who's actually started a business and started something from scratch. As I shared with you, my grandfather had his own business. My mother had her own business. In fact, my mother sent me to college because she was working 3 different jobs, 2 of them that were actually her business, and 1 as a state government employee. I am someone who really understands how to start things from scratch. When I went to Philadelphia OIC, we were in bad shape. But in those 3 years, we have taken the budget from $1.3 million to $4.2 million in 3 years. We have helped nearly 3,000 people be able to get jobs. So I understand, just like you, because I'm a job creator. But also I'm a pastor, and I started my church from scratch. And like many of you, when you're talking about business and entrepreneurship, we're talking about people who really have the gusto on the inside. And so we started our church with 20 people in our house in November 2014. And then we were able to get our new property, which is now in East Mount Airy. We bought it for nearly $2.2 million, a nearly 7-acre parcel of land. And the church is nearly 700 people now. When we were filming a video, Senator Art Haywood came and he shook my hand. He said, "Congratulations, welcome to the neighborhood." And so I share that with you because I know how to create jobs. I know about payroll. I know about health care. I know about those same issues. I know about paying a loan and the bank making sure that you pay it. And so when I go to Congress, the issues that I really want to focus on are the issues I already know about. And they're issues like health care. And so we have to have a serious health care plan. Yes, the Affordable Care Act has some challenges, but I'm a firm believer in what Bernie Sanders talks about, and that is Medicare for all. The reason why I support that particular plan is because I know that when you look at someone who makes $50,000 a year and they need health care for their family, under the Bernie Sanders plan, it would go from $12,000 a year now to around $3,100 a year. That's a serious break. And so as we talk about health care, it's going to be very critical. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Next, for the same question, Mr. Brian Leib.
Thank you. So while I haven't started a business, I did, in a way, grow up in a family business. At 14 years old, I started interning in my dad's family business and started to learn about what it meant to make payroll, what it meant to, have to deal with rising insurance costs. So, I started at the bottom at that company, and I worked my way up to ultimately being the chief operating officer of that business. So, if I'm elected to Congress, there's one thing that you can bank on as small businesses here in this room is I will always fight for small businesses. I'm a firm believer that small businesses are the backbone of a city like Philadelphia. We're true job creators, and again, I would always be a strong supporter of small businesses.
Thank you very much. And moving on to Senator Haywood.
Thank you very much. So I'm not going to give you the family history or background of Congressman Evans, but I will share a few things. Number one, in Congress, you're one of 435. There's 435 members. And so it's nothing like running a small business. Making government work requires working across the aisle, negotiating, and getting legislation passed and money into districts. And Congressman Evans has got to be one of the best in the history of Philadelphia in getting money into this city, well over $100 million. He is now on the Small Business Committee. He's a ranking member of the Economic Growth and Tax and Capital Access, all about providing access to capital for small businesses. He has proposed 2 pieces of legislation which will help small businesses. One is with respect to increasing cybersecurity, providing resources for small businesses so they're not vulnerable to the kinds of attacks that you'll see from businesses across the nation. This is critical for small business. He's a big advocate for infrastructure. We all know we need a viable infrastructure so we can compete. That not only includes roads and bridges, it also includes having high-speed access to internet so that businesses can compete across this entire city. We have a digital divide, and in many parts of our city, individuals don't have access to broadband. So these are some of the initiatives that we look at how government can assist small businesses, financing, infrastructure. Congressman Evans knows how to make government work for us.
Okay, fantastic. And I do want to interrupt one moment. We did have another candidate who was going to be here. Is Willie Singletary here tonight? Willie, I apologize that it wasn't written on my paper on the first try. Would you please welcome us on stage? My apologies. And let's get to know Willie for a moment. So when you're situated, and we'll give you extra 15 seconds to tell us about yourself. My apologies, Willie. So, Mr. Willie Singletary.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Willie Singletary, and I'm running for Congress in the 3rd Congressional District. I'm running because I believe in my community. Number one, I've been a servant all of my life. I received my first citation for being a servant at 13 from the late Senator Hardy Williams. I served in the United States military, and I served in the war. I've been preaching since I was 7, pastoring since I was 18. I believe that we need to come together and work together, have sensible legislation that is for all people. I think it's time that our elected officials come together and put aside our personal agendas and work together and for the people's interest. So I'm concerned most importantly about education, justice reform, and I will work with all leaders to come together to make a major difference in our community.
Thank you. And let's stay with you, and I'll give you that question that we gave the others. I'll restate it for you. As a prospective representative of Philadelphia in Congress, what experience and capabilities do you have that would lend you to be a strong representative of small business in Philadelphia? What changes would you like to pursue in Congress on behalf of small businesses?
Well, first, as a current small business owner and have been for multiple years, my father has had multiple businesses down through the years. I believe that it's important that we work together as a small business to make sure things are done well. I own a limousine company, and in that limousine company, I understand the struggles that small business have, sometimes even finding finances or getting loans But I believe that the government should assist them more in making sure that they can be sustainable in our community, because it's the small businesses that flow through our economy that provides jobs for the locals that live in our community. And so I will work hard to support the efforts of making sure that the small businesses have what they need to be successful, and to make sure that we can get some government funding so that other people can start small businesses in the community.
Very good. And we're going to stay with you again and start the next round of questioning, if that's okay. The next question: Congressional Republicans approved historic tax cuts in 2017, which lowered the statutory corporate tax rate from 35% to 21%. Do you believe, sir, this was an effective economic stimulus? And what impact do you think the tax cuts will have on Philadelphia's small businesses and communities?
Well, when I look at this particular tax cut, I don't believe it was effective. I think it's going to hurt us as a people. It's for the top 1%. They're the ones that's going to receive the breaks. They dangle $1,000 or so in front of us and want us to be happy with that. But in the long haul, when you got to cut funding with your Medicaid and your Social Security, I believe that it's going to hurt us later. The Mark Morale, who is the president of the Urban League, they have a proposed legislation to fix it, and it's done with the Congressional Black Caucus, which I believe is a sensible legislation to fix it and make some provisions in it so they can be effective for all people.
Okay. And the same question now addressed to Senator Haywood, the surrogate for Dwight Evans.
Thank you so much. And we characterize the tax breaks as really a tax scam. And the reason it's a tax scam, let me just be crystal clear. It provided $1.5 trillion in tax relief, mostly for the rich. But that was it. And so the rich pay $1.5 trillion less. The expenses of the national government are the same. So when the rich pay less and the expenses are the same, who comes up with the difference? We do. And so that's the fundamental feature of the tax scam. We got left holding the bag for $1.5 trillion. And so what that means for small businesses and communities here in Philadelphia is that money to cover health care, not available. Money to cover infrastructure expansion, not available. Money to cover most of the fundamental challenges to address poverty, to create opportunity, not available. And this money is not available so that we can improve our communities because of the tremendous tax break that has been given to the large corporations. And the large corporations have not increased wages dramatically. If you read the Wall Street Journal, you'll see that many of the large corporations have something called stock buybacks. Stock buybacks is basically a way that rich corporations can enhance their own wealth, bring more money into their own pockets. And so that is the fundamental impact of the tax scam. Congressman Evans voted against it and will continue to vote against any of these efforts that really increase income inequality, shift the burden to everyday people like us so that the rich can get off the hook.
Thank you. Brian Live, do you need the question again? Or?
No, I'm okay, thank you. So for the first time in my lifetime, our Congress passed sweeping and I would say epic tax reform. We simplified the tax code and we made our business taxes in line with the rest of the world. You've heard about companies like Apple who are bringing back billions of dollars of cash that they've been keeping overseas, something to the tune of $35 billion. So I'm a big proponent of the tax cuts, and with respect to Senator Haywood, talking about how it hasn't really helped to improve wages at all. You have companies here in Philadelphia like Beneficial Bank and other institutions that have increased their minimum wage to $14 and $15. They've done that as a result of tax reform. And, it's appropriate to bring up, too, that, here at a small business forum, for a lot of the small businesses here in the room, you're what's called pass-through businesses. And as a pass-through business under the new tax reform bill, your first $75,000 of income is taxed at 9%, the rest at a 25% tax. So I beg to differ, and I say that tax cuts are starting to work for small businesses here in Philadelphia.
Very good. Kevin Johnson.
I do not agree with the tax plan. I mean, we all know that this is what we call trickle-down economics. And we have seen this before under Ronald Reagan, and now we're seeing it again under Donald Trump. What we need is someone who can speak to Mr. Trump, who can speak to congressional Republicans and be your advocate, and that advocate is Kevin Johnson. When we look at what has taken place in December, the reality is that 86% of the tax filers with business income would not benefit at all from this tax plan. And when you look at those who are benefiting, it is those who are C Corp, those who are corporations. The majority of you who are in here are not C Corp. You are S Corp, or you may be LLCs. And so your tax structure is totally different. And so when you look at this Trump tax plan, it was not designed for small businesses, but it was designed, as Brian has said, for the Apples. It was designed for the large corporations. And so you need someone who's going to fight for you in Congress. Lastly, what I would share with you is that we have to also do something about the language of what a small business is. Right now, the definition of a small business is that you have to have, if you have 1,500 employees or less. If I were to ask who in here actually has more than 100 employees, raise your hand. Exactly. So therefore, the whole definition of a small business doesn't even really apply to the majority. So we have to change that particular definition so that we can begin to have a tax structure that benefits you. And again, as I said before, I'm an entrepreneur. I know how to create businesses. I continue to create businesses. I come from a family of entrepreneurs. And so I will be your biggest champion in Washington, D.C.
Terrific questions and answers this evening so far. This is our last question for these candidates, and it has to do with gun violence. We'll start with Kevin Johnson. Schools, businesses, neighborhoods, and homes have all felt the effects of gun violence. Philadelphia's murder rate increased in 2017 with 20.2 murders per 100,000 people, compared to 17.4 in the year 2016. What steps, if any, would you take to reduce the amount of gun violence and overall violent crime in places such as Philadelphia? Again, Kevin Johnson.
Thank you so much. I'm laughing because they get to hear all my answers so they can try to tweak it a little bit.
I think that's what they're trying to do, yeah. I saw them taking notes.
I already have them.
But seriously, obviously I'm against the proliferation of guns hitting our streets. I understand this quite well. While I've been blessed with a great education, a graduate from Morehouse College like Senator Haywood, got my doctorate from Columbia University, the reality is I could have been that child on the street. And so for me, what we have to begin to do is to address this gun issue by having universal background checks. Secondly, we have to make sure that we get rid of assault rifles like the AR-15. 3, we have to begin to make sure that our children are safe, and the whole notion of having guns in the hands of teachers, teachers already have enough to do. That's not their job, so we should not even let that even happen. And fourthly, we have to begin to make sure that the NRA understands that we are not working for them, that we are the citizens of the United States of America. And so we have to make sure that our children are safe, our neighborhoods are safe, and we have to make sure that our communities are safe. And so those are just some of the things that we'll begin to work on there in Congress. But we have to make sure we have tighter, stricter gun laws so we can protect the citizens, but we also want to make sure that our citizens are also safe.
Okay, we pose the same question to Brian Leib.
You know, so I believe that if we want to start really moving the needle on gun violence, it starts in the household. And it starts with helping our young men and women, provide them with, you know, big brother type resources, big sister resources that a lot of homes don't have that. A lot of homes have one parent. And I think that that's definitely something that is hurting us right now. Do we need to get illegal guns off the street? 100% we do. 100%. I can speak to something that I have experience with a group called the Charitable Ticket Network, which is a nonprofit. And what we do is we provide opportunities to families in at-risk neighborhoods all throughout the region, honestly. And what we do is we provide them with access to a professional sports game. We pay for the transportation, the food costs, transportation costs, I said transportation, sorry, and the ticket costs. But what that does is it takes families out of an environment that maybe isn't very happy for them. And it puts them together into a sporting event where they can be a family, And then vice versa, there's times where the parents aren't there, and we're helping to with these young men and women, and helping to provide with mentorship. So it's organizations like CTN, it's organizations like Big Brothers Big Sisters and Unity in the Community and different organizations out there that we need to continue to support. And if I'm elected to Congress, you can bet on me being there to support them with any kind of funding that we need to really move the needle on gun violence.
Thank you very much. And for those of you who came in late, Dwight Evans could not attend. He's in D.C. for a vote, so we have surrogate Senator Haywood responding.
Thank you. So I just want to share that it's important to have mentoring programs, important to have Big Brothers. I've been at Big Brothers. Mentoring programs, Big Brothers, charity, nowhere near enough to address the challenges that we have. It's all important, nowhere near enough. And so, as Pastor Johnson has said, Congressman Evans is also in favor of universal background checks, also in favor of assault weapon ban, also in favor of the high ammunition clips being banned. But more than that, our challenge is not just about access to guns. Our challenge deals with the environment which encourages young people to use guns. Our challenge is a 26% poverty rate in this city. And that poverty rate creates a dynamic where individuals often see no choice other than violence to make it day to day. And so as a response to the fundamental poverty that we face, this is where the plans for infrastructure make sense. That's where jobs are. Congressman Evans also proposed an infrastructure plan to help modernize schools. And we know that the disinvestment in schools is one of the key reasons young people don't have opportunity. And so the School Modernization Act proposed by Congressman Evans would create some new buildings, environments which are stronger for young people to learn. So this is the path, in part, out of poverty. And if we can also address the poverty challenge, along with restricting access to guns, I think we'd be much closer to the solutions that we all seek.
And Willie Singletary, do you need the question again, or you're fine? Okay, let's hear from you, please.
How many of us on March 17th watched the March for Lives that was arranged by our children? And our children have spoke up and said, no more. And we need someone that will advocate and fight that it will be no more. It was just Saturday that I had to eulogize a young man by the name of William Bethel, a 16-year-old boy who was a star athlete, an honor student at Boys Latin, who happened to run into some friends from South Philly as he was on his way to a birthday party. His friends had got into an argument. Then 1 block later, he was shot. Never been in trouble in his entire life. Was a great kid, but yet because of illegal handguns and a teenager was shot and killed. And a mother sat there and had to watch her bury her son, mother and father, bury a 16-year-old. We need someone in Congress that's going to stand up to the NRA and let them know no more. We cannot sit back and be disillusioned by the current administration who care more about a check than a person's life. We can no longer worry about what other people are doing. We have to do something ourselves, and change starts. Now we can no longer even go to church and be safe. We can't even go to a theater and be safe. Our children can't even go to schools and be safe. When is enough enough? And I support our current Attorney General who's fighting to sue these gun manufacturers for producing military weapons. And I will make sure that that happens. And I promise you that I will fight, because I have a 16-year-old daughter and a 15-year-old daughter.
Thank you very much. And Mr. Singletary, since I brought you up to the stage last, I'm going to give you the option. Would you like to begin the closing statement, or would you like to wait till the end? Okay. So you're going to wait, is that correct? All right, so we'll start the closing statements, 1 minute per person, and we will start with Senator Haywood.
Thank you very much. Thank you for everyone who's come out this evening. As David Thornburg mentioned, it's really up to each of us to move the nation forward. We have a crisis in this nation with a corrupt president. And the only way we're going to be able to address that corruption is to get out and vote, not just here, but in this region. And so I know we have some candidates from the suburban areas that we've got to figure out how we can support them, because this nation is going to have a very difficult time making it with the current president. Finally, Congressman Evans, as I stated at the outset, is the candidate who knows how to make government work for us. He's proven it, not just in the years in the state legislature, but he is making changes in Congress. Making government work is what this job is about. Thank you.
Thank you. And Brian Leib.
Thank you, everyone, for being here tonight and for listening to what I have to say. You know, I'm running for Congress. It's very simple. I'm 32 years old, and the incumbent congressman right now has been in elected office for longer than I've been alive. So while I admire his passion for public service, I think it's time to go in a different direction. I think the status quo isn't working here in Philadelphia anymore. We're in a culture of public corruption that we've seen a sitting congressman, our district attorney, that are now sitting in federal prison. And the only way to really change things here in this city, as we've talked about tonight, is to step up and do something about it. So I'm running for Congress to be a strong voice inside the chambers in D.C., to represent you, everyone here in Philadelphia, whether you're a Democrat, an independent, a Republican. If you want to work together with me to move our city forward and create a brighter future for everyone, then I'm going to welcome you with open arms. Thank you again for having me here tonight.
Thank you. Our closing statement from Kevin Johnson.
I'm running for Congress because I care about you. I care about your family the same way I care about my family. My wife and I, we have been married now. She's back there in the back, wave your hand, honey, for 21 years. We have 3 children, 2 of whom who are in public schools right now, which is why the Philadelphia Federation of Teachers and the AFT endorsed this candidacy. It's because they know that I am someone just like you, has been just striving to try to take care of my family. And so as we look at this election is really about the future. And I agree with Brian. That's one thing we can agree upon. This is the season of change. While I respect Congressman Evans, I think that 40 years in elected office is enough. You should not go to elected office and view that as your career. It's time for change. It's time for a new future. It's time for a new Philadelphia. It's time for a new person to represent the new 3rd Congressional District. Kevin Johnson.
Very nice. Willie Singletary.
As a native of Philadelphia who has grew up in both parts of the district, in Uptown with my mother and in Southwest and West Philly with my father, I'm a fighter. And I fight for what I believe, and I fight for what I know is to be right. And so as your congressman, I will fight for a justice reform by rewriting the laws of this country. Too many of our African-American brothers and sisters are behind bars on trumped-up charges. We spend $42,000 a year for a person to go to jail and $12,000 a year for a person to go to school. That has to be reversed. I will fight for our seniors. I will fight for our veterans. I'm going to fight to bring education dollars back to our school system so that we can have programs like Bach and Dobbins had, because everyone will not go to college, but they ought to be prepared for the working force. So if anything, I won't whine, I won't whimper, because I'm not no chump. I'm a fighter, and I will stand up against Donald Trump at all costs. Remember me, Willie, as your fighter. Say this with me, Philly for Willie. And Willie
Thank you very
for Philly.
much. Thank you very much. All right. Thank you for your answers. We'll be moving on to the next segment with the candidates from the 2nd Congressional District. Thank you all. I'll make an announcement. Please have the following candidates come to the stage: Michelle Lawrence and David Torres. Congressman Brendan Boyle is not available to join us tonight because he, too, is in Washington, D.C. for a vote, and he sends his regards. Okay, quiet in the House, please. Thank you so much. You've been a very, very good audience. Once again, 1 minute for opening statements, and we will begin with Mrs. Michelle Lawrence.
And good evening, everyone. I am so excited to be here. I am Michelle Lawrence, and I am running for the 2nd Congressional District. And I am running for 2 critical reasons. One is because no matter how many times we've drawn this line, whether it be 2011 or 2018, we still end up at the bottom. I've never drawn lines with the intent of remaining at the bottom. The second reason is because we continue to have disparity in wealth. Well, I am running because it is time to address both of those issues. The district has sent up a distress signal, and I'm answering it with 3 simple letters: service, opportunities, and most importantly to us, sound and sustainable solutions. This is beyond passion. This is someone going to Congress with a plan. Michelle Lawrence for 2nd Congressional District.
The opening statement from Mr. David Torres.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to be
Sir,
here.
let's adjust your microphone. I
I
want to
feel
be fair. There.
blessed to be here. I'm running for this seat for the simple reason I lost my son to the drug and opiate. I don't want to see another parent lose a son to the drug and opiate. I don't want to see another mother cry. I've seen the abuse that the immigrants are going through and how nobody's supporting them. They feel scared. I speak their language. I'm going to be the voice for them. I'm going to fight for them. I'm going to put an immigration plan that goes across the table. I'm going to work for the school systems because school systems are abused, and there's no way any child should not have the best education possible. I'm going to keep fighting. I'm going to be the one that says, no, it's not good enough. I hope that I can convince you about that today.
Thank you very much. We're going to move to the question and answer portion of this segment. You each have 2 minutes to answer each question. And the first question will first go to Michelle Lawrence. Michelle, the Philadelphia job market has added 40,000 jobs in the past 5 years. How would you look to continue economic growth in Philadelphia? What sectors would you look to as the future of Philadelphia's workforce? And what strategies would you employ to make sure Philadelphians are ready for those opportunities?
What a multi-level question.
You got that all?
But I'm prepared, yes indeed. So Philadelphia was most known for meds and eds, medical and education. It is transitioning into a service industry, which encompasses insurance, it encompasses hospitality, it encompasses banking, and so much more. And so the jobs that are on the horizon need to be more along technology and in the hospitality industry and in insurance and in banking. Not to say that meds and eds is still not important, but small businesses are also innovators. And what I am looking to do is to make sure that we take policies that are already in place to go from growth to scale, like the new market initiative that was done in 2000, and to bring that kind of initiative to the beginning, to the small businesses who are starting small businesses like I just did. That is where funding is given, so that you have access to capital, so that you are able to employ, you are able to get the necessary insurances, you are able to do the refacing and reforming that is necessary for your small business. It is innovation. It is not staying with what is tradition. And so what I also know about small businesses is that small business owners hire those folks from the community. And that is what I want to fund. That's why I want to work within this new market initiative, because within that existing policy, there is $15 billion. $15 billion set aside to go from growth to scale. Imagine if we were able to take half of that to start new businesses who typically fail in the first 2 years because they don't have funding. That's what I'm looking to do. It's not to dictate what ideas you have. It is to get you accessing capital to support your ideas. That's what I want to bring back to Philadelphia.
Okay. Mr. Torres, would you like the question read again? It was a pretty
No,
lengthy one.
I'm
You're
fine.
all right.
I'm fine with it. Thank you.
Mhm.
I've been in North Philadelphia for 48 years. I've started businesses in North Philadelphia. I've run companies in North Philadelphia. I came to Philadelphia, it was booming with jobs, employment, factories. This industry in North Philadelphia, where we're at now, that I'm running for, had so much to offer. And little by little by little, it broke down. And I seen the streets break down. I think that what we need to do is support the small businesses that are carrying the weight right now and try to use some of that money that's out there that the 1% are getting. And I'm a Republican, but I say we need to get them to bring some of that money to us and invest it down here. When we merge what we're missing and merge technology and bring jobs, it's going to help the crime rate go down. It's going to give hopes and dreams to some of our children again, and teenagers and adults. If we could just stop fighting and saying it's the Democrats' fault, it's the Republicans' fault, and sit down and talk to union leaders and give respect back and get pastors out and open the church doors again and do them services again, we can bring our children back and get our youth back. We got to take responsibility, and I want to be your voice. I'm going to fight, and if you're a Republican and you're doing wrong, I'm going to call you out. You're a Democrat and you're doing wrong, I'm going to call you out. It doesn't make me a difference. But I'm going to fight for every single person out here. Doesn't matter what the color of their skin is, doesn't matter what race they're from, I don't care. I'm going to be there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our second question, David Torres, you'll begin. Trust in government is at an all-time low. Polls indicate many Americans are concerned about the current state of politics. What specific reforms would you champion to make our democracy more representative, responsive, and accountable?
First thing we got to do is stop letting them be comfortable anywhere they're sitting. We got people sitting here for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, and they give you the same story. How many people in here are going to vote this year? Everybody, right? How many people voted last year? Everybody, right? The year before that, the election before that, the election before that. And what did they tell us all? Oh, seniors have an issue. They ain't got no money. We're going bankrupt. But they keep spending the money. They tell you education's a problem, but they walk through the security grounds without issues at all. They ain't worried about our kids. Columbine happened in 1998, 1999, and you still can't figure out that if you gave them the half the security you got, our kids wouldn't be dying? It ain't the NRA's fault for everything we're doing. Everybody knows if we stop and people see or a child or a teenager winds up with some kind of mental health issues, well, what the... Sorry, because I'm not a politician. When I got to say something, I like to just say it. But let's be for real. How many flags went up in the last shooting? And politics and people on both sides will say it's the other person's fault. No, there were plenty of flags that came up and you ignored them. But you're comfortable there all these years. It's time to say enough is enough. We need to put time limits on these people. We need to take and have them with a report card, because anybody in here who's working, who's trying to get up every day, the poor Poppy on the store who gets up at 7 in the morning to make sure he's got the bread and works 12, 14 hours a day, if he don't open up his store, he loses it. If you have a job that you're doing 40 hours a week and you're...
Sir, I have to stop you.
Okay.
My apologies. Michelle Lawrence.
So there are a couple of things that I want to address. The first being is we have to stop allowing our vote being bought and suppressed. There was a time where we cared about the vote. 50 years ago, we recognized that this is the 50th anniversary of King's assassination. That was in part getting out the vote. Bloodshed over the vote. How dare we stay home now? How dare we allow people to think that there is no hope in our vote when there is absolutely change in our vote? So that's the first thing we need to do, is take our part around ownership. The second thing is, I would push in Congress that our election day is a holiday. Right now, part of this issue is people getting out. I have to work. It's a swing shift. Do you know right now they're trying to push legislation in Georgia in certain communities that you can only vote between a block of 8 hours? That automatically, in coincidence, it's Atlanta and the outskirts of Atlanta. We need to pay attention, not just with reform, but what's being done right now to suppress a vote. That becomes important. You need someone down there saying that whether it's Atlanta or Philadelphia, that those rules don't go. The other piece about reform, where I do agree, even though he is a Republican and I'm a Democrat, is that there is no accountability. At some juncture, I am held accountable every day for my actions. At what point do we say you have a time limit on sitting in the seat, especially if you have not produced good fruit? That's what I'm looking to do.
Thank you. Question 3 will give Mr. Torres a chance to pick up where you left off, where I had to cut you off. But we're going to start with Michelle Lawrence first. And I have asked this question before, but I'll say it again. Schools, businesses, neighborhoods, and homes have all felt the effects of gun violence. Philadelphia's murder rate increased in 2017 with 20.2 murders per 100,000 people, compared to 17.4 in 2016. What steps, if any, would you take to reduce the amount of gun violence and overall violent crime in places such as Philadelphia?
So I'm very clear about this. I started a nonprofit in 2010 called Saving Our Boys. We took 30 young men from across Philadelphia who were deemed at risk. We held them all 4 years until they graduated from high school. And graduate they did, all 30. In fact, I have 5 graduating from college this year. That does not have to be the story of a few. It can be the story of a many. The first thing I want to do as your congresswoman is raise the age limit. Now, most of you may not know I have a financial background. It's a shame that you can get more paperwork for a loan than you do to get a gun. That has to change. There should be all types of investigation into your well-being, your stability, your mental capacity to say that you are equipped. So that's the second thing. The third thing is you should not be able to carry military arms when you're a civilian. I have folks that are in the military. There really isn't a need for you to have for you to bear arms when you are not in the military. If you are hunting, there are hunting guns for you. Outside of that, you are saying that you're in a war zone giving folks artillery that don't belong in a neighborhood. Raise the age limit. You must be 21 at a minimum to get a gun. That's how I see us impacting. But I won't say that that's the root issue of why we have so much violence. But those are the 3 steps I would take to reform and ensure that guns come off the streets here in Philadelphia and across our nation.
Thank you. And David Torres, our final question and your final answer.
Okay, I agree with her.
Let's
She had a
adjust
lot
your
of good
mic just a
points.
little bit more. Thank
A lot
you.
of good points. One thing I have to say. We look at kids and we say, they're shooting, they got guns. We're not giving them an outlet. Some of these people, they're out there and the drug lords have got given them better jobs than we are. They have no hope. We need to take responsibility for what's happening. We need to be responsible. We need to open up our doors and we need to get the people who are in these positions, in these seats, to say enough's enough. If you're not doing your job, get out. Let somebody in there that's going to try to do something. we in society can't accept what's happening to our kids. We need to say, okay, you're having problems, you need to talk to somebody. Talk to your church pastor. Talk to your church leaders. Talk to your teachers. Teachers are in trouble now because our kids are going to school, they're identifying them, and the budget's cut back, so they don't have the proper counseling and support service. Kid has mental health issues, and the mental health doesn't talk to the police. Doesn't say they should be an automatic. Person has mental health issues, do they have a gun? It should be a system in place to report it, and that gun has to be removed from the house. At the same time, if you see that your kid's having trouble, ask for help. Because by the time something goes wrong, it's too late. The damage is done. I don't want any teacher. A teacher is a gift. They mold and create the future of our own country. I don't want them to have to shoot a child. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. We're moving on to closing statements for this segment, and we will begin with Michelle Lawrence.
Thank you for being here this evening. There's some critical things you need to know as to why I should be your next Congresswoman, actually your first Congresswoman, because there's never been one in the state of Pennsylvania. So I would be the first African American or woman to serve in Congress. The reasons I am saying that is because I don't have your typical background. I have a financial background. I have managed $5 billion. I've had 84 lines of business that I've had to manage, 500 team members. Why is that important? Because you heard that there are 435 different congressional folks that are in D.C. You need someone that knows how to negotiate across lines. I already do that. You need someone who understands that it's not about the blue, it's not about the red, it's about the green, and someone that knows how to find it and bring it back home. It needs to be equitably distributed across this city and not favors for a few, but policies and money for all people. That's why you need Michelle Lawrence in Congress.
Nicely done. Thank you so much. You may clap. We're moving on to the third and final segment of this candidates forum, and we'll be bringing up candidates from the 5th Congressional District. We're still going with the list that we had earlier? Okay, so I'm going to announce folks. And
David Torres.
oh, goodness sakes. I'm sorry, David. I have to say, I will plead fatigue. I've been up since 3:30 this morning. That's part of my morning routine for what I do for work. So if I'm out of sorts, I apologize, David. Please go. 1 minute.
Okay. While I'm running for this position, I'm not a politician. I'm going to be straightforward. I'm going to fight for every single one of you. I'm not going to look at any differences. It ain't going to matter where you're coming from. But I can do a couple things. I can reach out to the Spanish community as well as the English speaking community, and I can say to them que yo estoy aquí para ayudarlo a ustedes. Ven, there's Spanish people who are trying to start a business and can't. They don't know how to juggle what's going on. I want to be the voice for everybody. It's a lot of money, Washington. It's a lot of money all over the place. But when's it coming down to us? You know, they got big lobbyists and fancy cars and all the benefits that they got. I don't care about that. I'm happy going to Freddy's and Tony's and getting some rice and beans.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, thank you again. Thank you, audience. You're doing fine. Hanging in there. This is our largest group by far. We'll be hearing from 6 candidates, and we will begin with the opening statements. 1 minute per person, and let's begin with Larry Arata, please.
Hi, I'm Larry Arata. I grew up in Havertown, went to Haverford High School, public school, played sports there, went to Princeton, played football there, was all Ivy Center. Had a 20-year career in software sales, sold software applications and services around the nation and internationally. but always wanted to teach because teachers put me in the right direction when I was in 8th and 9th grade going in the wrong direction. So my wife who's here, we sat down and we talked about how we could take a $100,000 pay cut and I could become a public school teacher in Philadelphia. So I teach history and English, and I coach football and wrestling at George Washington High School, and I've been teaching and coaching in Philly for 15 years, and it's, besides marrying Heather, the best decision I ever made. I've been an activist in the environment, obviously an activist in public school education issues, but the reason I'm running, like Mr. Torres, unfortunately, tragically, Heather and I lost our son, Brendan, 23 years old, 4 months ago to the opioid crisis, to a heroin overdose. So we formed a nonprofit, and we are looking at solutions to the opioid crisis. We've lobbied Independence Blue Cross that insurance companies have to cover long-term care. Long-term care works.
Thank you. Sorry about your loss, and we've heard loss from other candidates as well, and it's very tough to hear that. Margot Davidson has a surrogate, and make sure that I'm saying this right. Michael Lee?
Yes.
Michael Lee, please. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Michael Lee. I'm here filling in for Margot Davidson. And some information about Margot Davidson is that she was born and raised in Philadelphia.
You can begin again.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Michael Lee, and I'm filling in for Margot Davidson tonight. Just some things about Margot Davidson, that she is from Philadelphia, as well as a product of public schools. And before being elected to state rep, to the state representatives, she was a journalist, as well as started 2 nonprofit organizations, one to help children as well as women in troubled households, as well as the second one was for small businesses. She has been a fighter and a champion, which is one of the reasons that I personally was drawn to her, as well, aside from the aspect of her being also a journalist. But Margot Davidson is also a champion, and she was a fighter. And even when the odds were against her back in 2010, she managed to flip a Republican stronghold and win a seat, being the first African-American woman to win a seat, as well as Democrat, in the 164th Legislative District. Margot's a champion, which will continue to be a champion in Congress. Thank you.
Thank you. And Thaddeus Kirkland.
Good evening. My name is Thaddeus Kirkland. I'm currently the pastor of the Community Baptist Church located in Chester, Pennsylvania, where I've pastored for the past 10 years. I'm also currently the mayor of the city of Chester, where I've been the mayor for the past 2.5 years, all bearing good fruit. My former life, I was a state representative in the House of Representatives for 24 years. During that time, I chaired the Pennsylvania Legislative Black Caucus, the first person outside of Philadelphia to ever chair that caucus. I also chaired the Tourism and Recreation Committee, one of the largest, or the second leading industry in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, the first person of color to ever chair tourism and recreation. I'm running because I'm ready right now. I heard some folks saying, you know, how long a person has been in office and those type of things. Well, I have the experience, I have the wherewithal, and I have the credentials. And I'll share those things with you as soon as I get some more time.
Yes, thank you. The minute goes by very quickly. Now time for Lindy Lee. Please hold your clapping to the end of the closing statements, but we understand your zeal.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Lindy Lee, and I'm running for Congress in the 5th Congressional. I just want to say that I'm running for Congress for all of you. I see some familiar faces in the crowd, Marie, Emmanuel, and we need a true servant of the people. We need someone who's not beholden to special interests or to the moneyed interests. And only in America could someone like me, someone who came from nothing, run for Congress. I'm the granddaughter of literate rice farmers. English is my second language. My family and I came here with basically nothing. We built something out of it through hard work and dedication and determination. And I'm running for Congress so that you and your family can live your own version of the American dream. I also want to make sure that you have affordable and high-quality health care. You know, being a woman should not be considered a pre-existing condition, right? Exactly. And if you have a pre-existing condition, you should still have access to health care. The government should negotiate on our behalf to bring down drug prices. I'm also in favor of $15 an hour minimum wage. If you adjust for inflation, wages haven't grown since the 1970s, and you deserve better than that.
Thank you. Mary Gay Scanlon is next.
Good evening. My name's Mary Gay Scanlon. I came to Philadelphia 35 years ago to go to law school. I went to the University of Pennsylvania. I'd grown up along the Canadian border in New York State, but what I brought with me was the values instilled by my family. My dad worked for Jack Kennedy in the White House, and then he worked for his brother Bobby when he ran for Senate and he ran for the White House. My mom was a public school teacher. So what I came with was this strong belief that government is supposed to help people, not the rich and not the NRA. So that's been my career as a civil rights lawyer, as an elected school board official out in Delaware County, as a community volunteer, as a home and school mom of public school children. I've been working to help people my entire career. So what brought me into this race is the Trump administration. We've seen our federal government go from being an ally to an adversary under this administration and the Republican-controlled Congress.
Thank you. Thank you. And Molly Sheehan.
Good evening. I've wanted to be a scientist since 7th grade when my public school teacher brought me a string theory textbook out of his own pocket so I could delve into my passion. And I grew up in a pretty poor family. My mom had a struggling small business providing after-school care that struggled when people's budgets got hit hard. And I worked really hard. I worked as a waitress, I worked in retail, I started a nanny business in college, and I put myself through Haverford College. And then I got my PhD at Penn. And I finished my fellowship, or I'm finishing my fellowship in bioengineering where I do cancer research. And I woke up November 9th and asked myself, how do we get here? How do we get to a point where our government doesn't represent us anymore? And it's because our government isn't working for the people anymore. It's working for large corporations. It's not working for small businesses that are the hearts of our community. It's not working for businesses like mine and my mom's. And that we need to send new people with innovative ideas to reclaim our country and work for people.
Thank you very much. Thank you, candidates. We're going to move on to the question and answer portion of this segment. You each have 2 minutes to answer each question. We are going to start with the first question. It will be addressed to Larry Arata and Margot Davidson. As a prospective representative of Philadelphia in Congress, what experience and capabilities do you have that would lend you to be a strong representative of small businesses in Philadelphia? What changes would you like to pursue in Congress on behalf of small businesses?
Thank you for that question. I was in business for 20 years. I sold software. I understand the challenges of having a $1 million quota and end of my career, closer to $2 million quota on my head with sales managers saying, bring in some sales or we'll bring in someone else. Our daughter, we were determined to help our daughter start a small business. She's a fashion designer. And we, with some help of some relatives, we enabled her to start her own, selling her own clothes. Her business is called Vicious Vesture. It's in Havertown and it's online. And she's a very creative person. And so government should work to help people like my daughter, a very creative, talented person, realize her dream and be able to start a business. There wasn't a bank in the world that would loan her money to start a business because she was in tremendous debt from college, as Heather and I are, putting her through college. And it shouldn't be that way. People who are talented, people who can bring jobs to the community like small businesses do as an engine of the economy, we should encourage them and we should make capital available to them, so that we can have a growth in small businesses in Philadelphia, throughout the district, and throughout the country.
Thank you. And the same question goes to Margot Davidson. Oh, in for her, Michael Lee.
You know, long before Margot Davidson got to the state legislature, she has always admired minorities, women, and disadvantaged business owners and the hard work they put in. But she also noticed that a lot of women, as well as minority business owners, did not really have the opportunities to allow their businesses to grow, which is why that in the state legislature she did champion aiding women as well as minority-owned small businesses to grow. And she also comes from a district, Upper Darby, where a lot of these organizations that are here tonight actually exist in her district in Upper Darby. And a lot of these people are also small business owners. And they have been incredibly grateful of having Margot Davidson there for them and helping them with allowing their small businesses to grow.
Okay. Question number 2 will be directed to Thaddeus Kirkland, Lindy Lee, and Mary Gay Scanlon. The Philadelphia job market has added 40,000 jobs in the past 5 years. How would you look to continue economic growth in Philadelphia? What sectors would you look to as the future of Philadelphia's workforce? And what strategies would you employ to make sure Philadelphians are ready for those opportunities?
Thank you for the question. First, I just want to be clear. The 5th Congressional District is made up of all of Delaware County, a portion of Philadelphia, southwest Philadelphia and Southfield, and a portion of Montgomery County. And so I want to make sure that we're talking about the whole entire 5th Congressional District when it comes to job creation and training. One of the things that we must do if we're going to deal with job creation and training is we have to have a great VOTEC schools. VOTEC training has been something of the past and has not been implemented as it should be now. That's why you have a lot of young people who are unemployed and out of work. There's a gentleman here in Philadelphia, a principal by the name of Darrell Overton, who started a VOTEC program in his school. 30 students were involved in a welding class. A businessman here in Philadelphia provided all of the equipment. Those 30 students graduated from that welding class, and when they graduated from that welding class, they walked into jobs paying them $40,000 plus. These are the things that we need to have happen in our communities so that we can create jobs, so we can create wealth, remove the young people from those corners, and get them moving forward into the job sector. As your congressperson, someone who has the experience of working with others across the aisle and working with small businesses as well as large businesses, we will be able to do that because we have the experience. That's why I always say, I'm ready right now. Some folks don't have the background. I have the political background, and I'm not afraid to say I'm a politician because as soon as you raise your right hand and take the oath of office, you too become a politician.
Thank you, Mayor Kirkland. And Lindy Lee to answer the same question.
Although it is true that the district comprises all of Delaware County, let's not forget that Philadelphia is also in the district. I don't want you to be forgotten. And although I work in cancer research right now, I started a company with my mom. It's an international education company that partners with schools in Philadelphia and Delaware County. And I see firsthand the importance of unlocking capital for small businesses, especially minority-owned and those by women. We need to do everything we can to make sure that they can prosper so that we can cut down red tape so they can fulfill their dreams. And actually, right before this event, we went to the SEPTA office and talked about how we need to extend the Broad Street line all the way down to Navy Yard. Think of the endless opportunities that would unlock. We need that so businesses can grow, so they can have easy access to transportation and other businesses. And I worked in financial services as well. And one thing that I want to talk about is we need legislation like Dodd-Frank because the working class is a foundation of our country. Dodd-Frank is important because it keeps Wall Street under control. We have to do everything we can to invest in working families. That means raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour and doing everything we can to support unions because they are the bedrock of our working class. And if it were up to me, I'd even reinstate Glass-Steagall, which is it would reimpose a separation between commercial and investment banking. You might not understand all that, but the point is, I haven't forgotten the pain of 2008, and I don't want you to ever go through something like that again.
Thank you very much. And Mary Gay Scanlon, the same question. Do you need it posed again?
No, I think I've got it.
Okay.
Do you want to do it for the audience?
Sure. We're talking about the Philadelphia job market, adding 40,000 jobs in the past 5 years. How would you look to continue economic growth in this city? What sectors would you look to as the future of Philadelphia's workforce? What strategies would you employ to make Philadelphians ready for those opportunities?
So, as I understand it, many of the jobs that have been added in the Philadelphia region over the past few years have been in eds, meds, and tech. So through the education sector, research, through medical research, in which 2 of our candidates here have been involved, and through technology. So supporting that continued growth in those regions in technology, we have North 3rd Street, otherwise known as Nerd Street, where a lot of the tech innovation is happening. We've got the Comcast 2 coming online. We've got the Drexel Innovation Center coming online. There's going to be a lot of great tech jobs involved there. With respect to medical research, Philadelphia is one of the biggest medical research cities in the world. 1 in 6 doctors in this country have received some of their training here. We have a lot of cancer research going on here, so that's an important sector to support. And then education. We've got some world-class universities here. But what do we need to do to support those things? First of all, with respect to education, we need to do a better job with K through 12 education. Our public school system here has been gutted. I know that because I was at the Education Law Center for a decade. I've been a school board member in the suburbs, but I've also worked with programs here in the city at Constitution High, at Benjamin Franklin High School. So I know how precious those dollars are and how stretched thin they are. We need to be preparing our kids in this school district and across the region for the jobs of the future. We're not going back, unlike the Trump administration, we're not going to be working in coal mines anymore. So preparing people to work in coal is not the way to go. We need to be talking solar, we need to be talking tech, we need to be looking to the future. The second thing we need to do is remove barriers to employment. We need criminal justice reform so that we don't have mass incarceration because of the variety of factors that have been, basically jailing people of color in this city, around the country, and preventing them from getting jobs. And the other piece of it is a pathway to citizenship for our immigrant communities.
Thank you. Very good. Thank you.
They need jobs too, and they don't need to be in the shadows.
Thank you. Our third question, Molly Sheehan and Larry Arata, this goes to you. Philadelphia has had the highest rate of poverty out of the country's 10 largest cities for the past decade. Right now, a quarter of Philadelphia's population lives in poverty, and about 12% live in deep poverty, meaning they earn less than 50% of the federal poverty limit. Is government currently doing an adequate job to address poverty? If so, what is working? If not, what changes are needed, Molly?
Well, clearly not. So first thing we need to do is raise the federal minimum wage. It has not gone up in a long time. We need $15 minimum wage. I run a grassroots campaign, and I still pay all of my employees at least $15 an hour. I truly believe that if you cannot pay someone for an hour of their human life a living wage, you do not deserve their work. That people deserve that. It's a matter of dignity. And we need to give people health care. People go bankrupt out of health care bills, and that's an abomination. The ACA, I am grateful for it, is the reason my mother has health insurance for the first time in her adult life, but it is not enough. Her premiums are skyrocketing, and we're helping her. But if we couldn't, I think she would get any health care. She wouldn't be able to afford anything because of her deductible. And so single-payer health care is the greatest thing we can do right now for our economy. It'll help small businesses thrive also. It'll allow small businesses to compete with large conglomerates that don't treat their workers well because you won't have to worry about the buying power to your insurance. I spent 5 years negotiating group health plans for students at the University of Pennsylvania through the ACA rollout. I understand its problems and its successes, and that we can move to a single-payer system that will provide for everybody in the Philadelphia region and in America. It'll make it easier for businesses to also compete on a global market where other people have single-payer health care already. You won't be disadvantaged because you have to pay this huge extra bill for your workers. You can hire people at part-time, people who can work 3 or 4 days a week if they want to, because they won't be shackled to a job for 40 hours a week just to get benefits. And then they'll be more productive for you. Having 2 people working half-time, if that's what they want, those people will be more productive at 20 hours a week. So I absolutely need to do more for poverty. And it involves making sure jobs are actually, we are creating jobs that allow people to live a life of dignity on one job, on 40 hours a week, that can support an entire family. Every single person in Philadelphia, Delaware County, Montgomery County, and in America deserves that dignity.
Thank you very much. And Larry Arata.
Yeah, I agree with everything Molly said. I'd like to add that in this country, we actually discriminate against the poor. We marked the 50th anniversary of the death of Dr. King and the struggles that he was turning to with the successes of the Civil Rights Act of '64, the Voting Rights Act of '65, and the last great accomplishment, the Housing Act. He we still today, 50 years later, allow landlords to discriminate against people based on the source of their income. If they have a Section 8 voucher, meaning that they're poor, and this Section 8 program prevents homelessness, landlords are allowed to not accept that. Doctors are allowed to refuse to accept Medicaid. These are just forms of discrimination against the poor. We have an unconstitutional funding of public school education, which dictates zip codes determine how well funded your public school education is. I was blessed to go to Haverford school system where we had everything we needed. My kids went there. I was mentoring kids from the Schuylkill Falls Project through the 90s. A missionary from my church asked me to do so, so I did that, and I saw the disparities in their resources in their public schools, and it moved me more to my calling to become a public school teacher. We ought to have equal funding for public schools, whether they're in Chester or Radnor, whether they're in South Philadelphia or Haverford. It's absolutely unconstitutional that every child in this country, their needs are not met, and that public school is not equally funded. Ryan, who's just leaving as Speaker of the House, is going to leave as Speaker of the House at the end of his term. He liked to say entitlements, entitlements, entitlements. What he's talking about is attacking Medicaid, cutting Medicaid. We can't cut Medicaid. We have to expand Medicaid. We have to move toward a single payer. But the first step is to expand Medicaid so it not only provides for the poor, but it also expands to people who cannot afford or are locked out of the current private markets.
Thank you very much. I want to invite a candidate who is able to attend tonight and has entered late, Teresa Wright. Please come to the stage. Welcome. Let's make room for you. You'll be involved in this next question. Question number 4 will go to Michael Lee and for Margot Davidson. Thaddeus Kirkland will be answering this. Lindy Lee, Mary Gay Scanlon, Molly Sheehan, and Teresa Wright. Let's start with Michael Lee. Trust in government is at an all-time low, and polls indicate many Americans are concerned about the current state of politics. What specific reforms would you champion to make our democracy more representative, responsive, and accountable?
Thank you. I just believe that to restore trust into the electorate, into people, I just think people just need to be more aware of how government works, what their elected officials are set to do. And by doing that, it's to make them more tangible. Margot Davidson is a long-standing figure in her community. Everyone knows about Margot in her legislative district, and she will also continue to make herself to be more available and tangible to you, the electorate of the PA 5th Congressional District. So those are things that Margot would definitely do, is to restore faith as well as trust into their government. And as well as the fact that, it's just the fact that Margot also comes from a background that mirrors a lot of the people here. She's a family woman, she's a wife, she's a mother. She comes from a district that is comprised of working families. And I think seeing someone like that definitely shows to voters that this person mirrors them. There shouldn't be a situation where most of their elected officials are essentially from a very elite, the elite class. It should be for people like Margot who come from and are aware of working families.
Thank you. Thaddeus Kirkland.
Yes, three quick thoughts. Transparency, listening and learning, and results. Transparency, number one. As a person that's would like to represent the people in the 5th Congressional District, one must be transparent. One must be an open book, nothing to hide, working along with other persons in Congress to get things done. Most of the times, folks have lost their faith in government because the government has not been transparent. It's either one misstep after another, and when those missteps are made, they find ways to cover them up. If we are going to represent the people in a manner that is respectful and in a manner that they can believe in you, you have to be transparent. Nothing hidden, no hiding. The second thing is having the willingness to listen to your constituents and even learn from your constituents. Nobody up here knows everything. Nobody in Harrisburg or Washington knows everything. That's why you surround yourself, or you listen to your constituents, and you surround yourself with good people, knowledgeable people who know the issues, who can help you with the issues and not be so big or so bold that you think that you're the brightest bulb in the bunch. And the final thing is results. One of the things that I'm proud of, I'm able to provide results. That's why I keep saying I'm ready right now. When you talk about results, as a state legislator, $67 million brought home for our infrastructure by this legislator. You talk about results, we talk about $7.5 million for a transportation center. Both of these produce jobs for the residents and the locals. When you talk about results, having the first casino in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania built in your community, that was a result by this legislature. Having a professional soccer team, all of these produce jobs for our residents. Thank you.
Very much. Lindy Lee, you're next.
50 years ago, the Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated. And I've been reading a lot of his works recently, and something that I came across that really resonated is that how could you possibly ask someone to pull himself up by the bootstraps when he doesn't even have boots? And right here in our great city of Philadelphia, 2 men were arrested in a Starbucks. That is unbelievable. This is 2018. We can do better than that. It is the job of the government to make sure that things like that never happen again. I feel like we're living in a new era of Jim Crow. And with voter disenfranchisement and voter ID laws and mass incarceration, criminal justice reform, well, if we pass that, we will instill confidence in the government. And I seek to be a true public servant. I was raised in the Christian faith, and I was always raised to put that the first shall be last and the last shall be first. I'm completely yours. Politicians walk around like they own the place. Do they forget that the power that they have emanates from you? They're only there because of you. They should be held accountable to you. One of my goals in life is to be the most accessible public servant of our generation. A lot of you have reached out to me over Facebook. I think you can attest to the fact that I do respond. Frankly, because if politicians don't have enough time for the people they want to serve, they should get a new job.
You have 30 seconds left if you wanted to wrap. Okay.
One thing that I did want to touch on is free and fair elections. We need a president who takes the threat of Russia intervention seriously. If we cannot preserve our democracy, then the bedrock of our government is deeply undermined.
Thank you. Mary Gay Scanlon, please.
So as I understand it, your question is what reforms?
Yeah, the question, I will reiterate it, it's been a little while. Trust in government at an all-time low. Polls indicate many Americans are concerned about the current state of politics. What specific reforms would you champion to make our democracy more representative, responsive, and accountable?
So the first time I ran for office was when I ran for school board. And I ran for school board because our local board was not being responsive or transparent. They told us that a school construction project was going to finish in time for school to open after Labor Day, and it clearly wasn't going to, but they kept saying it would. So I grabbed a camera and I hopped over the construction fence one weekend and took pictures to show that, in fact, they were not telling us the truth. And after that, I ran for school board. What I was able to do while I was on that board was to increase transparency, to respond to constituent questions, explain why we were doing things on the board. Up until that time, there'd been a lot of rancor. There'd been fighting between the administration and the teachers and the board. The board meetings usually went until midnight. While I was on the board, while I was president, that didn't happen because we listened to our constituents. We listened to each other. We didn't agree on everything. There were some Tea Party folks on the board that didn't agree with the rest of the board, but we did find ways to work together, and that's what I'd hope to bring here. In my job as a public interest lawyer for the last 15 years, I've been working on voting rights issues, working with the National Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights. We helped them develop testimony when the Voting Rights Act was reauthorized in 2005, 2006, and we've been working with them since the Shelby decision gutted parts of that act. I've been working on issues of gerrymandering. Gerrymandering has greatly decreased trust in our elections, because we end up with people in safe districts and they don't have to listen to people. They can just take the most extreme positions and then go scream at each other and not have to compromise. I've also been working on voter suppression issues, modern Jim Crow laws that prevent voters from voting because they deny them the ID they need to get into a voting place. So all of those things have decreased trust. I think the last thing, Campaign finance reform, we really, really need to address that because we need more transparency in where the funding's coming from. And one piece that I would like to see go into place is requiring presidential candidates to disclose their tax returns.
Thank you. Molly Sheehan, same question.
Yeah, we talk about returning trust to government. Well, a government needs to re-earn your trust. There's a lot of reasons not to trust the government right now. I think it's why a lot of us are running, is because we don't have faith or trust in the government right now. And if you look around this room, most of us didn't have voting rights not that long ago in our history. That there's a long history, and now look at us. We're running for Congress, we're at congressional forums, small business owners, and that scares the people at the top, right? And so there is a lot of voter suppression. They don't want us claiming our seats. And we must stand up to that. And ultimately, it's about money, right? It's about money in politics. It's about the oligarchy that controls our government. And what we need is candidates that are only beholden to the people. I've been running my campaign for a year. My average contribution is $68. And I do not take corporate PAC money. I have not taken any PAC money so far. And I'll be very careful if I do about where it comes from in terms of special interests and whether or not I ever think there'll be a string attached to it, because all the strings attached to me should be from the 700,000 people in the district. And things we can do to counter these efforts at the top to make sure every single person can vote is make sure it's easier to vote. In my South Philadelphia ward this past year, I waited 3.5 hours to vote. That is ridiculous. Who can do that? I watched at least 30 or 40 people leave while I was in line. And the answer isn't just making it down to an hour, right? That's still a problem. It's voting by mail. Every single person should be able to vote by mail, like many other states do. It should be easy. You shouldn't have to take a day off work. You shouldn't have to miss wages to go vote. It is a right. We also need public campaign financing so that every single person can contribute the exact same amount to a federal campaign. I want to institute federally what they've done in Seattle, where every single person gets the same vouchers to contribute to people. So a homeless person can contribute the same amount as a millionaire, and they get the same exact control over their representatives. So it's one person, one vote, same amount of money.
Thank you very much. And we brought on Teresa Wright, so this is the first time we'll hear from you. Again, the question, what specific reforms would you champion to make our democracy more representative, responsive, and accountable?
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me. I do apologize for my tardiness. The one thing I really want to work on is being able to clone myself and be in multiple places at one time. But since I can't do that, I just wanted to tackle the tax reform. I'm an accountant, and I will fight for the public schools. I will also fight for women's rights and our right to choose. I will attack the war on the opioid and drug addictions with holistic approaches. I will represent the people, not the party. And we need leaders who understand the issues that impact our community, like education, poverty, mental and physical health. I will hold a moral and compass that will allow us to do our part, regardless of my work history. I know what our government needs to accomplish in order for us to get on track. Who's going to fight for us? I'm going to fight. I am the one who you can relate to. I had to fight to be here today. I had to stand alone and bear witness to our justice system and notice how people use idle threats and scare tactics to try to get me off the ballot. But I won. I won 2 cases. I represented myself pro se, and I beat the 2 most sought out election law lawyers. So who's the real fighter here? Who's here, standing here because I had to fight to be here? I am the one that's fighting to be here. I am fighting for us because I was ready to really give up and say, okay, this is too much. But then I said, no, I'm going to keep moving. So the journey that we take in life, it's not a dream fulfilled for me. It is an obligation to our children and to my grandchildren. Yes, I am a grandmother of 3, and I'm a mother of 8.
Thank you very much.
So I know. Thank you.
Thank you. And we're going to stay with you, Teresa, and go on to our next question. This will also be asked of Mary Gay Scanlon, Mayor Kirkland, and Larry Arata. The question is, Congressional Republicans approved historic tax cuts last year, which lowered the statutory corporate tax rate from 35% to 21%. Do you believe this was an effective economic stimulus? And what impact do you think the tax cuts will have on Philadelphia's small businesses and communities? We'll stay with you, Teresa Wright.
Well, as an accountant for 15 years, this is my area. I am an advocate for the tax reform, and I am totally upset with what is going on in our new tax system. This is not an effective stimulus because large corporations, they already have the means to acquire and depreciate assets to reduce its taxable income to zero. Therefore, they don't pay taxes anyway. It's okay to lower the tax rate for corporations as long as you lower the tax rate for small businesses and individuals. Corporations, they're going on an offer to stimulate the economy, but the trickle down does not trickle down to us. I am a witness to that. I worked for corporations. I managed about $6 billion a year, and the trickle down did not come down to me. So, but as a capitalist society, we have to understand that in order for it to be the wealthy, they have to be the poor. So what I will do is I will continue to fight for Philadelphia's small businesses and help reduce the poverty rate in low-income communities.
Thank you. Mary Gay Scanlon. Take a moment for the microphone.
Yes.
Thank you.
No, I'm not a fan of the recent tax cuts. I think we've had ample proof that trickle-down economics does not work, and so cuts for the wealthiest and for large corporations is not going to have a good impact on our small businesses in the Philadelphia community. What I would like to see instead is investment in infrastructure, where allegedly we have bipartisan agreement that we need infrastructure investment, and that investment helps both small businesses, business in general, and workers in the Philadelphia region because it creates jobs, it creates good jobs. Do you know that there are manufacturers, there's a turbine manufacturer in western Pennsylvania, builds turbines, a relatively small business. They have to get those turbines to Philadelphia, but instead of being a 300-mile drive, which is, right over the turnpike can't handle those turbines because they're heavy. So it takes 800 miles. They have to detour by 500 miles to get those turbines to the port here to sell them overseas. So that impacts that small business. It impacts the environment because of the extra fuel. So we need infrastructure reform or infrastructure investment. We also have to invest in our people. We have to invest in our students, whether through better K-12 training, so people are being trained for the jobs of the future rather than the past, or through student debt relief. Okay, we've got $1.3 trillion in student debt in this country. If we were to excuse some or all of that student debt, that's money that goes right back into the economy through consumers who are going to use it to buy their kid new shoes or pay for daycare at a small daycare agency. That's money that is going to drive our economy and is going to particularly help small businesses. Thank you.
Sure. And as a courtesy to our candidates, just a reminder, please silence your phones. I still keep hearing some. Thaddeus Kirkland, you're next.
Thank you. Well, let's say it this way. It was a stimulus for the rich. The rich simply got richer. This was probably one of the worst tax bills that could ever come across the desk of anyone. Poor persons continue to get poor because of such type of legislation. Here we have a president that refuses to let folks see his tax returns, and nobody and everyone is going silent, while the president still yells things like lock her up, lock her up, lock her up, but no one continues to yell, show us your tax returns, show us your tax returns. And so this was a terrible, terrible bill. But what I would like to do is focus on young entrepreneurs who are eager, willing, and ready to put their dollars, their hard-earned work, and their talents on the table. And we've done that in the past, and we continue to do that as a legislator and as a mayor. Young entrepreneurs like Ron Starr, who formulated Penn Home Healthcare, a grassroots business that now has grown into is growing into a multi-million-dollar business. Young entrepreneurs like Jaleel Beats, who has started up a sneaker villa slash, it's now titled DLTA, but a sneaker villa that comes into a community, a poor community, by a young man who's putting his money where his mouth is. Young entrepreneurs like Pat Worrell, a realtor, a young lady who's working hard to climb up the corporate ladder. Young entrepreneurs, we have to invest as government in our youth and in our bright, intelligent young minds. As your congressman in the 5th Congressional District, I will focus on those young entrepreneurs.
Thank you, sir. And Larry Orada, I'll just kind of recap the last part. Do you believe this was an effective economic stimulus? What impact do you think the tax cuts will have on Philadelphia, small businesses, and communities?
No, it was a horribly unfair, unbalanced, inequitable tax cut. It was a giveaway to corporations and to the rich. It will exacerbate the tremendous disparity between the rich and the poor in this country that is driving us back 100 years to the Gilded Age. We should have learned from this the first time when trickle-down economics was exposed as a myth during the Reagan administration. It is a temporary stimulus at best, and it ends up costing us in the long run and putting tremendous pressure on the government to cut services to the people who need it most. It cuts education, it cuts Medicaid, it cuts services to the poor and to the middle class. We have, as I said before, part of the 1.3 trillion, sometimes it feels like that to Heather and me, the debt that we're under because we put our daughter through college. We're expected to pay $500 a month for that student loan, and she's expected to pay upwards of $100 a month, and I'm a middle-class teacher. My wife's a middle-class project manager for Mainline Health. So how are we expected to do this? And my daughter's starting out as an entrepreneur. So it's just tremendously unfair that we have a continued assault on the education, assault on the environment with these cuts to the education and to the EPA to fund a giveaway to the wealthy. The reason people don't believe in government is because of money in politics, because it's slanted to the wealthy. We were on our way to campaign finance reform a decade ago with McCain-Feingold, and the Supreme Court with Citizens United ruled that unconstitutional because somehow campaign contributions are speech. Well, they're not. It's just a way to control and to have unlimited financial contributions so they own politicians. Elections shouldn't be bought and paid for. They shouldn't go to the parent of the candidate who has the most money. They shouldn't go to the person who has super PACs from the super rich and from the former mayor of Philadelphia.
Thank you very much. This is our final question, folks. It's going to be posed to Michael Lee on behalf of Margot Davidson, Lindy Lee, and Molly Sheehan, and it goes like this. Schools, businesses, neighborhoods, and homes have all felt the effect of gun violence. Philadelphia's murder rate increased last year with 20.2 murders per 100,000 people, compared to 17.4 in the previous year. What steps, if any, would you take to reduce the amount of gun violence and overall violent crime in places such as Philadelphia? Michael Lee.
So for Margot Davidson as a state legislator, she has also noticed that a lot of the crime that's taking place in like areas of Philadelphia as well as Chester is that it's a result of a lot of young people not having an outlet to be able to thrive. The education system is bowed out, essentially, and the fact that there's not really much of any opportunities or the jobs or anything else for young people to do well. So it creates an issue where there's poverty level is high. So a lot of these young people resort to crime to essentially just get by. Margot has championed education as well as proposing bills to heighten the stakes of being able to acquire guns. She found that background checks are necessary, and also extending background checks to ensure that organizations as well as state organizations have access to mental health data. She's found is not to more so stigmatize those with mental illness, but she also found that a lot of people with mental illnesses are more likely to be victims of gun violence as well for themselves, and can essentially be a danger to others as well themselves due to gun violence. So she has proposed existing legislation. So that means right now there is existing legislation on the books right now that requires a vote to be passed to allow these more strict gun laws to prevent guns to be able to be easily and easily acquired by just anybody. So Margot Davison has definitely championed that, and I definitely implore you to go on her page on the State House of Representatives website and definitely comb through the bills that she has authored or sponsored and co-sponsored. It's all there. So she definitely has a proven track record in terms of dwindling the effects of gun violence.
Lindy Lee.
Trayvon Martin, Stephon Clark, Eric Gardner, Las Vegas, Parkland, Aurora. These are names that have been immortalized by gun violence. Enough is enough. On December 14th, 20 children and 6 teachers were senselessly slaughtered. I remember that night vividly. I decided right then and there to run for office because I'm so sick and tired of waiting for politicians to get their act together. We are the ones that we've been waiting for. It's become my mission in life to have universal background checks, 3-day waiting periods, restrictions on high-capacity magazines, a ban on assault weapons if the Republicans are feeling generous. We need this to happen. You should be able to walk down the streets of South Philadelphia and Delaware County, attend church, drop your kids off at school without having to worry about your lives. You deserve that much. That is the essence of being American. When did we become a nation in which it's okay to kill our children? Enough is enough. And the NRA has a stranglehold on our democracy. I once heard an anecdote about how a guy goes into a shop and he's trying to buy a gun, and the gun shop owner says, you can't buy a gun, you have to wait 3 days. And the guy trying to buy a gun says, 3 days? I won't be angry in 3 days. And that's the entire point of common sense gun violence prevention policies. 80 to 90% of Americans agree. In fact, gun owners do as well, but Congress is behind. It's because they're bought. We need public servants who are not afraid. In fact, if I get an F from the NRA, I'm going to wear it as a badge of honor. We need public servants who desire change and transformation and the betterment of society more than they desire their seat.
What steps, if any, would you take to reduce the amount of gun violence and overall violent crime in places such as Philadelphia? Molly Sheehan.
So I agree with what Lindy said, that we do deserve to walk around our neighborhoods without worrying about things. Every person deserves that. When we talk about liberty, people talk about liberty of owning guns. It's a fundamental liberty to feel safe in our own communities, feel safe in our own homes. That is such a more fundamental right. And we need to be getting illegal handguns off the street. We need to create legislation that makes it so Harrisburg can't keep obstructing Philadelphia from making laws that work for Philadelphia in the name of outside Western Pittsburgh. They're obstructing our liberty. They're obstructing Home Rule Charter of Philadelphia to make rules that work for Philadelphia. But ultimately we need to ask, how do we get here, right? How do we get to a point where someone is entering a life of violence, entering a life of crime? And it's because we fail people. We fail people from day one right now. We need to reform our education system and make sure that no one's opportunities are limited by the zip code they are born into. And we need to start from birth. We need paid maternity and paternity leave. And we need to do it in a way that works for small businesses so that it doesn't become a detriment for small businesses competing with large corporations, so that there are subsidies for businesses under a certain size to pay for their workers when they go home with their babies. Because education starts with your parents. We need childcare subsidies that actually track with the cost of childcare, so nobody is going to work worried about where their child is in the morning. We need universal federally funded pre-K and after-school care that is ADA or disability compliant. So no one's worried about where their kids are, and every single child starts kindergarten at the same level. We also need to increase federal funding to our public schools. I dream of a day that eventually all public schools are federally funded, because we cannot have communities or even whole states where children do not get an education they need to thrive, and that we do bring in vocational training. We make sure that kids have a job that they can live a whole career, not just a job, a real career out of high school or out of community college without having mountains of debt, so that they have other options.
Thank you very much. We're moving on to closing statements. You'll each have 1 minute for your closing statement. And in advance, thank you for joining us this evening, and you may clap at the end of all the closing statements. We're going to begin with Teresa Wright.
just want to close to say, are you looking for someone to buy their way into office or earn their seat? There is a difference. Working as a mother, full-time, a community advocate, and I actually adopt communities of children to make sure that they have the proper education and the proper resources that they need so they won't have to worry about things like books and clothes and shoes. I've done that for 15 years. It's time for me to take it up a notch and pass legislation to make sure that things are in place for our children at all times. And we need to make sure we have individuals in office that push legislation during the off-season and not push legislation only when there's a tragedy. For example, for the gun issue, the gun reform, it took 1,600 mass shootings for everyone to start saying ban on assault weapons. It's time for a change. Vote Teresa Wright.
Thank you. Molly Sheehan.
The Philadelphia region has so much to offer. We have amazing communities, we have hardworking people, and we have amazing innovation. We have some of the best universities in the area. But what we see is that our innovation flees. I see it from my colleagues in engineering. I have 5 patent applications, and it was easier for me to run for US Congress than it was to start a biotech company. That's not right. And so we need to be removing those barriers. We need to make sure that the innovation that's here in all of our communities is staying here, and we're removing the barriers to entrepreneurship. We're making sure that people can stay in their communities and make sure their own communities are thriving, that we're building pipelines, not to prison, but to people staying as teachers, staying as doctors, staying as people that can mentor their own communities, and that we keep building a Philadelphia that continues to thrive. And so today I'm asking you, as someone who understands how to foster innovation, who understands how to remove the barriers to biotech and tech, especially to build a world-class sector here that we deserve, I'm asking for your vote so that I can build that here to Philadelphia.
Thank you. Mary Gay Scanlon is next.
Thank you. So up until 8 weeks ago, the district that was the heart of the new 5th Congressional District was a safely gerrymandered district. Looked something like Goofy Kicking Donald, as it was portrayed in the papers, and it was built out over 6 counties to protect a Republican incumbent. But now we have the opportunity to elect someone who more accurately reflects the people who live in this district. The new 5th is a regional district. It runs from Philadelphia row houses out to horse farms in Delaware County, but it contains some of the biggest economic hubs in the region. It includes the airport, it includes the sports stadiums, it includes universities and research centers, it includes tech centers. Despite all that, we are still the poorest of the 10 largest cities in Philadelphia. And I know this because for 35 years I've been representing clients who are at or below poverty level. That's what you do when you're a public interest attorney. So I've been representing working class families, children, and immigrant families. There's a lot the federal government can do to fix that.
Very much, thanks. Lindy Lee is next.
Being American is the greatest blessing of my life. I'm running for Congress so that you can say the same. I'm also running for Congress so that your kids can have access to high quality and affordable education, regardless of their zip code. I want them to be the masters of their own destiny, so it's not dependent on their race, their gender, their socioeconomic status, their sexual orientation. They deserve a high-quality education no matter what. And America is more than a place. It's more than a physical location. It's an idea in all of us. It's a flame that we have to keep alive by government that truly belongs, as President Lincoln said, of the people, for the people, by the people.
Thank you. Thaddeus Kirkland.
Thank you. I simply want to say, let the work I've done speak for me. $2.5 million for new recreation facility in various communities. $1.5 million for a brand new Boys and Girls Club. $1 million for our law enforcement personnel. $1.5 million for our fire departments. $67 million for infrastructure rebuilding. $6.5 million for transportation center. A Harris Casino, professional soccer stadium. As your 5th Congressional District congressperson, I will do the same. I will bring home the fruits of our labor. Thank you for your support.
Thank you. Michael Lee, again, in for Margot Davidson.
Thank you. Admittedly, I'm a writer by trade. I was a print news journalist. So my explanation of all the great things Margot Davidson has done during her tenure before and after being elected to the state legislature probably didn't do much justice. But I will say, definitely research Margot Davidson. You would see that she's a decent, credible, as well as a great champion for your rights here in the 5th Congressional District. She has a proven track record. She's the only experienced and tenured female legislator here. She's a pioneer. She flipped the district in her home district, making her the first African-American woman elected to the state legislature in the 164th district. She is battle-tested, and she touts a proven track record. Again, I'm definitely telling you, go on to the State House website and look through the bills she has authored, sponsored, as well as co-sponsored. And so those things definitely make her not only not only battle-tested, but also battle-ready. She's a champion now and will continue to be a champion for the underserved, unfairly funded, and the poorly paid.
Very
Thank
good.
you.
Thank you. And the final word goes to Larry Arata.
Okay, we have wonderful candidates here, and whoever wins is going to be a great improvement. What I bring to the table is I'm the only teacher. I'm from a middle-class background. I'm not super wealthy. I'm not super funded. I'm running a grassroots campaign on a shoestring budget. No one's buying me. I don't have super PAC money. I don't have Mayor Rendell's Rolodex. I don't have a rich mom funding my campaign. I don't have super PAC unions funding my campaign. I'm a middle-class guy running a shoestring budget. I'm the only teacher, the only union member, the only one who's actually tried to organize a union and been involved in a unionization campaign. I got things done as a grassroots environmental activist. When they wanted to build that incinerator in Chester, I fought against it with those community members. When they wanted to dump the ash from that incinerator into my community, into the quarry, to fill it up, I fought against that, and that permit was denied. When he needed open space preserved in my township, I formed a group and we got it done. And when my son died, I formed a group to fight the opioid crisis.
All right, thank you very much. Congratulations to all of you. Thank you so much. I want to thank the Committee of 70. Also, thank you to David Oh's office for this event and the Philly Neighborhood Small Business Council and Philly CAM. It's been a pleasure to be working on this project tonight. Thank you. And David O is going to come up and say a final moment. So hold up there, hold up.
Let's give a warm round of applause to Jennifer Lynn from 3 o'clock in the morning. Too late tonight. Thank you. She's such a professional. And, I'm not going to keep you long. First of all, thank you for being here. As much as we thank these candidates, we couldn't have a democracy without them. It takes voters, informed voters like yourself, many leaders. Please go back and share your impressions, and we'll see what happens May 15th and then into November. Have a great night.